It's essential that we get a big, deeper and broader appreciation of Dr. King's work, his work against apartheid, his work for African independence. That's not talked about. They think he just wanted folks to sit together on buses or go to the same school, and it's much broader than that. So it'll be my honor to do that one. I believe it's on January 26th at 7 o'clock at Woodridge Library.
Are you guys taking notes? You have the calendars open. January 26th at Woodridge. And Martin Luther King and Pan-Africanism. That's what it sounds like as far as just internationalizing his effects and what he has done, pretty much.
It is necessary to do that so that we understand that the image we've been given is not the truth. It's not the whole truth. It's not even nothing but the truth. It's mostly manufactured falsehood. And I mean, there are historians who believe to their dying breath that King was actually a Pan-Africanist, given his unknown work on behalf of the continent and the fact that he built personal relationships with the men and women who were going to be the leaders of independent Africa.
Would you mind naming a few? Maybe some familiar names that people...
Sure. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana would certainly be one. Kenneth Kaunda, who he shared the lectern with. Tom Mboya of Kenya. These are some examples that immediately come to mind. I mean, before he got actually involved in the national civil rights movement, he was already a member of the American Committee on Africa, ACOA. And it's frustrating at times, but to see the box that they want to put him in. And if you don't mind me saying,
I don't mind at all.
I'm getting old and getting cranky, so you got to understand that everybody wants to pimp the King of 63, but they don't want to talk about the more fully formed King of 68. So when he talked about a guaranteed income, when he began his discussion on reparations, when he wrote, where do we go from here, community or chaos? And again, letter to Birmingham jail is fine, but folk need to read it rather than just memorize the title so that they can understand that there were references to Africa in the letter to Birmingham jail, letter from a Birmingham jail. But we have to get back to that all politicians, including the one currently in the White House, will pimp the King of 63. And so he never had another thought in 64. And so he never uttered another statement of fact or action in 65, 66, 67, and 68. And that's a shame, because he would come to embody a critique of militarism, of elitism. And that's what makes folks nervous. So when we have American politicians, African American politicians, they want to freeze him, they want to trap him like an insect trapped in amber. 5 years before. I wouldn't want to be, most of the folks that are here tonight probably have a job where they're evaluated, on a regular basis. Lord knows I know I did. And, you want to be evaluated on your best, not your next to the best. And since life is a constant series of improvements, you would rather be rated on your best than on your not so hot, you're not so good. So to talk about the King of 63 as though he didn't make any further contributions is, as the old pastors used to say, a lie from the pit of hell.
A lie from the pit of hell. So you touched on something that really struck a nerve in me. I could say it struck a nerve. And we're talking about history and isolation, right? Just what you touched on earlier. And like you said, oftentimes we have a way of romanticizing the past and of really painting people as the saviors, pretty much. And in my opinion, if you don't mind me saying this, it's pretty much what has set up the next generation for failure, because it's holding these men in high esteem like they're not perfect. No, like they're perfect, like they're not complicated, and making it seem as though the whole movement fell on their shoulders alone, pretty much. So my question to you is, fast forward, as he said, 68. Fast forward about 60 years later to this date, to this year, pretty much. What lessons can we learn from King as we try to look more to Palestine, we look more to the African continent, and just internationalizing our struggle and connecting it with what's happening around the world?
As we sit here on the anniversary of Rosa Parks, it is timely and fitting that we do exactly that. And we would be, again, doing something that Dr. King did consciously, consistently. He would often say, particularly after he got back from his first trip to Africa in 1957, when he went to Ghana, that he was able to link the struggles of oppressed people around the world. He understood he wasn't in it by himself. And until you get a global perspective on oppression, then you escape. You're not doing the hard work. You don't understand that, and particularly in a world he didn't know, which was social media. A friend of mine told me about a friend of his whose daughter had been in contact with some young Palestinians, and how she was living in Ferguson at the time, and how the young Palestinians were telling her over social media what to do to keep the effects of tear gas, to handle the effects of tear gas. So yeah, that's it. I get giddy when I think of King or Garvey or Malcolm having social media, and what kinds of things. I mean, woo! That's all I can say. Y'all forgive me.
1 million followers off bus.
And when we consider that Garvey himself, without the benefit of radio or TV, was able to put together a worldwide audience, that his publications were considered, if you will, persona non grata in a dozen different nations, from Jamaica to Japan. Anything that talked about the freedom of people of color was the colonialists didn't want that. They had everything they could. They put everything at their disposal to stamp those kinds of ideas out. So, going back to your initial question, we must learn to internationalize the struggle. We must learn the benefit of study. And here I'm going to get in trouble with some.
Please.
With all due respect, you cannot get a full and complete education just off of YouTube. If for nothing else, YouTube doesn't have footnotes. Okay, I'm sorry. I know you want it easy. I know you want it quick. But there is no substitute. Let me hit you with an amazing consideration. Just a consideration. That until you put the seat of your pants to the seat of the chair and read, you don't own what you repeat. Okay? Please understand that.
You heard it here on AllEyesOnDC.
Okay, you're copying what you heard somebody said, but heaven help you if you get 2 or 3 deep questions, because you can't go as deep because you don't own the information. You're parroting. You're repeating what somebody else said, and you have no more depth or consideration or perspective than the parrot does. And when the parrot gets hungry, or you want to distract the parrot, all you need to do is throw out some seed. And the parrot's going to go wherever the seed is. We need to have information that enables us to an extent that nothing deters us from why we were studying in the first place. And once we do that, I'm not saying that you cannot use YouTube as a way to meet different perspectives, right, different kinds of information. Not a great idea, but then you got to do the hard stuff. I'm sorry. And particularly if you have aspirations of giving it to the next generation, the children are going to ask questions sooner or later. They're going to ask you sooner or later, well, brother, so-and-so and so-and-so. I mean, I've been in this room doing presentations, and folk will take me outside and say, well, yeah, Brother Gibbs, but what about A through K, and let's double down on X, Y, and Z. If all I did was listen to somebody say it, I don't have enough. I don't have enough to give it to them in the way that they might need it. So we have a responsibility, those of us that think there's a wonderful term in mass communications theory, gatekeepers. If you gonna stand by the gate,
that's an old school term.
Yeah. Well, I'm old school. What can I say? You know, if you're gonna stand by and maintain control of the gate, you got to have your act together. Anything less, and you underserve and misserve those people that you claim to represent.
Because social media sort of took the key of the gate out of the gatekeeper's hand. And to your point about just knowing about the knowledge fully and not being a parent, I often, in discussions about African history, I talk to my contemporaries like that because a lot of our information, unfortunately, comes from memes. You know, nice pictures with a couple sentences about what happened. And I say to myself, why don't these memes have footnotes, man? I would love to see a footnote on a meme, you know, but for me, I like using memes, but I go beyond the memes like you ask us to do, you know. At least do a Google search, find a book or two, go to Sankofa, try to verify that information first, and then dig deeper and then try to find it out. I want to touch on MLK's connection with other African leaders and emerging Pan-Africanists.
Sure.
So, in your research and just, you know, gauging from that, could you say that King saw himself more as an African the more he connected with his brothers on the continent?
I think he did, and this is one reason. While he was aware of his connections, biological connections to America, he wasn't stupid about it. Yeah. You know, we get to a certain point, and we can be stupid about the flag. You know, we need to understand that as great as you may think it is an emblem of oppression and inequality. If you cannot look at it from both sides, you're misleading not only yourself. You have the right to mislead yourself. What you don't have is the right to mislead anybody else.